সব সব কথা শোনা যাচ্ছে, আমরা অনলাইন আছি, অমনকে বলো ঘরে যেতে। ঘরে যাও, ঘরে যাও, ও ঘরে যাও প্লিজ। অনলাইন আছি, বলো ঘরে যেতে।
start, Shangarta?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. A very warm welcome to this international webinar on nature, blend of science and literature, organized by the Department of Environmental Studies in association with Internal Quality Assurance Cell, New Alipur College, Kolkata, West Bengal, India. Before we begin our session, on behalf of New Alipur College, I express our respect for the departed soul of Bharat Ratna Shri Pranab Mukherjee, the former President of India and an eminent son of Bengal and India who has passed away yesterday. This is indeed a great and irreparable loss for our nation. We extend our deepest condolence to his children and their family. We shall now observe 1 minute silence in his memory.
This call is now being recorded.
Thank you so much. Now I request all the participants to mute all their microphones and turn off their cameras. Please do not present your screen and ping the presentation screen shared by a distinguished speaker to avoid any unnecessary interruption during the webinar session. The feedback form will be provided in the chat box after the question and answer session is filled up. The e-certificates will be mailed within 10 days. Thank you in advance for your kind cooperation. Science and literature are both products of one's observation and experience on nature. In today's webinar, we have tried to blend both these two faculties to look at nature. For this, we have two very interesting sessions. In the first session, we shall have a talk by Dr. Punarbasu Choudhury, Assistant Professor of the Department of Environmental Science, University of Calcutta, India. And in the second session, we shall have a talk by Dr. Elisabetta Marino, Associate Professor of English Literature, University of Rome, Tor Vergata, Italy. We are extremely grateful to our distinguished guests for accepting our invitation. This webinar is the first international academic initiative by our department, which has been possible due to the kind patronage of Dr. Joydeep Shorangi, respected principal of the college, and the encouragement and active support provided by Professor Divesh Pera, respected vice principal of the college. We are glad to have them with us today. May I now request our respected principal, Dr. Joydeep Shorangi, to kindly give his welcome address. Sir.
Good evening to all. It is indeed a matter of prestige and privilege that New Alipur College has organized a webinar entitled Nature, Blend of Science and Literature. On behalf of New Alipur College, we welcome two very renowned speakers, Dr. Punarbasu Choudhury, University of Calcutta, who will be taking us through to the frozen wonderland. We are waiting eagerly to visit those rare possibilities, our rarest of rare pictures, and to know the hardest things that he has faced and possibly the wonders he has traveled, what we cannot see through his mouth. I'm really eagerly looking forward to more about the frozen land, the frozen wonderland from Dr. Chaudhary. We have with us another great speaker from the University of Rome, Tor Vergata, Dr. Elisabetta Marino, who is an esteemed professor of English, and she will be taking us through romantic literature and the environment. And romantic literature is always known as return to nature. And both the speakers will enlighten this evening, especially to all of us. And we are flooded with responses from different parts of the globe. And we have so many participants here in Google Meet, also YouTube live streaming. And we are eagerly waiting for their enlightening thought. And myself, on a personal note, I'm keen on both the topics to be delivered by two very reputed personalities. In this international webinar, I thank the IQAC coordinator, Dr. Shammubrata Das, for heading and steering our ship to proper direction. Our Honorable Vice Principal, sir, who is the motivating force behind all our activities. The Environmental Studies Department, they are energetic, sharp, and they are doing a fabulous job. And not the least, the technical help by Sundatta Madam, and who has taken trouble of taking the shoulder of pains and burden of love. And burden of love is always a fruitful matter. I thank everyone involved in it. Also, the participants who are taking part in the webinar. I also thank the topic that this webinar is, and which is very pertinent these days, and we should know more about nature when we are trying to forget everything about nature. We think that we are more powerful than nature. So I am patiently waiting to listen to the speakers. Over to the anchor. Wish you have a good time in next couple of hours. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your highly motivational speech. Now, I would request our respected Vice Principal, Professor Devesh Bera, to say a few words.
Greetings to our distinguished resource person, Professor Punor Basu Chaudhary, Department of Environmental Science, University of Calcutta. Professor Elizabeth Marino, Associate Professor, English Literature, University of Rome, Italy. Our Principal, Dr. Joydeep Sarangi, and our Coordinator of IQAC, Dr. Shammubrata Das, and participants. Department of Environmental Studies of our college, in collaboration with Internal Quality Assurance Cell, has arranged a beautiful webinar blending nature with science and literature. The most extraordinary fact about the need for a discussion of the relationship of science and literature is that it needs discussion. Thus, the strangeness of the idea can be more fully elaborated if we consider it next to two other great conjunctions, science and history and science and philosophy. There is a well-documented story of how history was used in understanding the work of early modern natural philosophers, and how history of science itself emerged as a coherent modern discipline within the 20th century. Now, a first attempt to examine the apparent incompatibility of science and literature is to consider their relationship historically. It could be the case that what we today call science did not interact with literature in their evolution towards modern disciplinary status. Early modern science is not the only period where the close proximity of science and literature is apparent. Now, I have no intention to kill time. Now, over to Dr. Sumita Madam.
Thank you, sir, for your words of encouragement. Now we shall move to the first session of the webinar. I would request my colleague, Mrs. Tanushree Gayan, to continue the session. Over to you, Tanushree.
Thank you, Dr. Shumita Shaw. Today, we are very obliged to introduce our first distinguished speaker, Dr. Punarbasu Choudhury, who has huge research experience in Arctic as well as Antarctic region. Currently, he is the Assistant Professor of Department of Environmental Science, University of Calcutta. His research interest areas are wide, including mangrove ecology and bioprospecting, air pollution and climate change, green chemistry, geochemistry, and geoinformatics. He has good number of publications in several reputed journals in the field of environmental science. And today we are very fortunate to hear from you, sir, on a science traveler to frozen wonderland. Over to you, sir. Sir.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible.
Thank you. Distinguished Principal Sir, Vice Principal Sir, all participants, it's my pleasure to present my experience in the webinar organized by New Alipur College. I'm thankful to the college authority for giving me this opportunity. To begin with, I start my presentation. Is the screen visible?
No, sir. Not yet.
Sir, it is visible. A science traveler to
Hey,
frozen
visible.
wonderland.
Okay.
Yeah,
Visible. Yes, sir, visible.
Okay, actually, when I will present, it is not possible to monitor whether it is visible or my mic is audible to all. If there is any problem, please let me know.
Sure, sir.
Sure, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay. So the topic is very interesting and challenging because blending science with literature is very difficult. Usually, to deal with science, they're away from literature, and the person who are dealing with literature, they're away from science, but usually the scientists, they are away. As because the literature and science is the two dimensions to describe nature, one empirically and other descriptively. So, to bridging between these is a great challenge. So, while selecting the topic, I intentionally choose the term travelogue because it's a type of literature which describes a journey. So, it's because I was fortunate enough to be participant in 29th Indian Antarctic Expedition. So, it is my opportunity to share my experience with this August gathering. So, to begin with, the word Wonderland, it is remembering childhood days, the story by Lewis Carroll, Alice in the Wonderland. Many of us dream about this wonderland. So where Alice gets lost, and there are lots of interesting activities in that wonderland. Lewis Carroll wrote it a very beautiful way, not only for the children, for all ages. Is there any wonderland in the world? Yes, I found a wonderland which was entirely frozen. And this wonderland is very rightly described by Andrew Denton, an Australian writer. Beautifully he wrote, if Antarctica were music, it would be Mozart. If it is art, it would be Michelangelo. If it is literature, it would be Shakespeare. And yet, it is something ever greater. The only place on the earth that is still as it should be. May we never tame it. What a wonderful word. May we never tame it. Really, it was a dream to be there. And when the dream took its shape, took it the reality, the journey was a long journey. It began in 1990s when I was student of class 7. From my school, we got opportunity to interact with Dr. A.K. Hajra in his presentation at Birla Industrial and Technological Museum after his return back from 9th Indian expedition to Antarctica. After that, there are lots of other people like Dr. Bulganin Mitra. He was member of the 15th scientific expedition. I had opportunity to work with him. In this book written by Sudipta Sengupta, professor of geology, Jadavpur University, she took part in the 3rd and 9th expedition. And finally, I could able to participate this expedition in 2019-20. So almost 30 years journey. From the inception, initiated in 2017. Before that, I thought how to participate during my master's, during my PhD level, but it was not possible that time. But when we applied the 37th expedition, our proposal was not finally selected. There are lots of queries, and we thought that, yes, we have some shortcomings. To overcome that shortcomings, I got an opportunity to make myself to work in another environment, which was Arctic. And in 2018, in this ship, I prepared myself for my next expedition. It was CGCS Amundsen in Arctic Ocean. And while working there, I got immense experience, which helped me in the next year while I called upon NCPOR, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, for defending 39th expedition proposals. There are so many experts, almost 15 experts, and we have to defend. Our proposal was on microplastics, how microplastics is polluting Antarctic environment. Finally, our proposal was selected. And after the scientific selection, there was another 2 rounds of selection. That was a very challenging. The first round was the medical checkup. At All India Institute of Medical Sciences, we were reported just 1 year back in August 2019. There was almost 6 days rigorous medical checkup. And who was selected after this medical checkup, they had been taken to the Himalaya. There, the ITBP Institute was commander training. The commander trainer trained the expedition members in different ways to combat the harsh climate in Antarctica. For that, there was a very beautiful words during the training. They usually tell us that a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. So they made the situation tough and tougher for us so that we can acclimatize ourselves for the toughest condition. We were taken into the cold water, ice melt, glacier melt water to cross it with heavy loads. We have taken into the rock and boulders for different climbing techniques. There are challenging physical tasks for climbing this almost 100 feet rock wall with physical fitness and the other skillful techniques. It was really a challenge to take part in this type of activities. It requires as well as physical fitness and mental strength. It was a beautiful support system from the ITBP persons. So not only climbing up, there are techniques to follow, how to climb down. This is called rappelling. Along with glacier techniques, how to acclimatize ourselves the cold environment of the glaciers. So we had been taken to glacier in the Indo-Tibet border region. After that, the final selection team. We are very lucky that to be selected for the final round of the expedition. And after that, we were declared that there will be 3 teams. One will go to Maitreyi, one will go to Bharti, and another one will be the voyage. So I was selected for the voyage team. The voyage was the backbone of the expedition. I will come it later. And this is all about Antarctica. Is the 5th largest continent of the world. There is no human habitation. Only scientific persons can go there for scientific research. The entire area is covered by ice, glaciers. Only 3% of the region is open, and entire 97% is covered with snow and ice. This region was attracted by so many people, starting from James Cook in 1770s, the first expedition to the Antarctic cycle. Thereafter, lots of explorers, Shackleton, Amundsen, Captain Scott. And the history of conquering the South Pole was very interesting. So it was first conquered by Norwegian explorer Ronald Amundsen, but only 33 days after Captain Scott reached there, though initially they started simultaneously to conquer this land. There was a challenge. Amundsen could get back, but Scott didn't. And the land of beauty, the land of poetics. Just to share one of the famous lines written by Bengali Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore in 1994 in his Bosundhara. It is written that মনে মনে ভ্রমিয়াছি দূর সিন্ধু পারে মহামেরু দেশে যেখানে লয়েছে ধরা অনন্ত কুমারী ব্রত হিম বস্ত্র পরা নিঃসঙ্গ নিষ্পৃহ সর্ব আবরণহীন যেথা দীর্ঘ রাত্রি শেষে ফিরে আসে দিন শব্দ শূন্য সঙ্গীতবিহীন. What beautiful lines described by Tagore. That the silence of the land is described by beautiful words, attracted by its beauty, its natural resource. 42 countries participated in Antarctic Treaty. They have permanent station all over the Antarctica. From this map, you can see there are 42 countries, some countries having multiple research stations in different regions of Antarctica. And we are having 2 research stations. One is here, another is here. This is Bharti, and this is Maitreyi. The first Antarctic program initiated in 1981, triggered by Syed Kashim of Ministry of Art Science. He was the first leader of expedition. The first ship, Polar Circle, took the expedition member to Antarctica. The first research station established at Dakshin Gangotri in 1983. And she is one among the first lady member of the expedition team, Dr. Sudipta Sengupta. In the third expedition, along with Dr. Aditi Pant, she participated in that expedition. Gradually, this Dakshin Gangotri station sank into the glacier. So it was picture taken by ITBP members from helicopter that how gradually this station is being buried into the ice. After that, the second base Maitri initiated. So before that, I must say that in 1984, India get a consultative status in Antarctic Treaty. In 1988, second research-based Maitri commissioned. In 1989, the first Indian expedition to the Weddell Sea. 98, National Center for Antarctic and Ocean Research initiated. 1999, Indian operation moved to Cape Town. 2003, task force was set for the third research base at Bharti. In 2010, first South Pole expedition took place. 2012, the third research base Maitri Commission. 2017, Indian satellite station established at Bharti. And in 2020, this year, the Indian footprint was set in Amri ice shelf for the first time. So in nutshell, it was the history. And to begin with the travelogue, I'll share one of the literature. It was a landmark literature written by Captain Scott before his death. It's a really heartbreaking message. He's writing to his wife, "To my dear widow." Just I'm emphasizing the term widow because he know about his future. First, lot and lot I could tell you of this journey, how much better it has been than laughing in comfort at home. You see, I'm anxious for you and the boy's future. But he's mentioning about the future of his boy, that make the boy interested in natural history if you can. It is better than games. I know you will keep him out in the open air. You can imagine, person is going to die, but he is instructing his wife to rear up his son in a way that he can become a natural historian. So this is the spirit. This is the spirit. I must mention there are several members we lost during the expeditions. This picture is taken in our research station Maitri, where we commemorate gratitude to the people. There are many people from GSI, from different research institute. They offered their life for this expedition. I'll not go into the history, but regarding the journey, it is the journey before the journey. So we have to standardize our research methodology. So we set up plans in Ganges with our students and local organizing bodies like Howrah Bigyan Chetona Samanvay. This person helped us a lot. So scientist, optical scientist R.L. Mukherjee. He helped us to devise a microscopic technique which can easily identify the plastics in the matrix of other materials. The next challenge was to take the luggage for the expedition. It was almost 750 kg luggage. Our students helped us a lot for packing and taking them. With the help of our students, I took all this luggage through Amaravati Express. By train, I traveled to Goa. It is during puja last year. After loading the cargo in this cargo box, these are the cargo box where we have to load all our scientific luggage, and this cargo box will be shifted to South Africa for our expedition. Thereafter, the final day came when we started for our expedition. It was 15th of December. We reported at NCPOR. There we got our official badge, our equipments, our dress. There was a farewell party. Then our voyage started from Goa to Ethiopia. There was a halt at Addis Ababa. From Addis Ababa, we fly to Cape Town. From Cape Town, our journey started. First, we have to go to Bharti, then Maitri, and then again from Maitri to Cape Town. It was our initial itinerary. So we reported at Immigration Authority in Cape Town port on 24th December. So we need a special type of passport from you. This one is white passport, official passport for participating in this expedition. And in the passport, we got stamped from immigration office at Cape Town port on 24th December last year. We boarded the ship Vasily Globalin, the Russian icebreaker, which will take us to the White Wonderland. Our journey started with the flagging of Indian Embassy in that very day of 24th evening. Our ship started from the Cape Town port. The tugboat guided our ship towards Atlantic Ocean, and next morning we reached Atlantic Ocean. And far away we can see the last landmass of the African continent, and the end is the Cape of Good Hope, which was we all know about it from our geography books. So I had a chance to visit that Cape of Good Hope before starting our journey. So keeping away Cape of Good Hope, right hand side, we started moving. While we were moving, there was great challenge. The challenge was roaring 40s, furious 50s, and screaming 60s. So these are the three boundaries protecting the Antarctic region. So it's a really challenge to be there because the sea was too rough. The old sailor saying is that below 40 degrees south there is no law, and below 50 degrees south there is no God. Literally, they still believe that. And usually we celebrate when we cross the roaring 40s because it is a challenge. The sea was rough. There are high crest waves. You can see what was the crest height, almost 12 to 15 feet crest height, and there was vessel motion in different ways. There are 6 types of motion associated with the movement of the ship, and this type of movement caused seasickness, and many of us was very sick during this. And during this sickness there was a realization. I remember the words of Ernest Hemingway, the famous Nobel laureate. He wrote in his book, The Old Man and the Sea. The line was very inspiring. A man can be destroyed but not defeated. Yes, that word inspired me. Gradually, I get well and started my research work in the ship. We are entering into 60s, so the snow is coming. The ice shackles you can see is forming from the railing of the ship. Gradually, the icebergs started flowing. So these icebergs are coming from Atlantic Ocean, from the Antarctic region. Gradually, we entered into the sea ice zone, the fragmented sea ice, and Finally, we reached Crown Bay. Before getting down, let's see about the inside of the ship. It's a very interesting part of our voyage. So this is the bridge from where the ship is being controlled. This is the radar screen through which the ship navigates. This is the monkey deck from where the navigation equipment are worked. He's the captain of the ship. He's the chief engineer. They assisted us for sampling and other type of activity. This is the boardroom where our everyday meeting is conducted. He was Javed Beg, Indian Architecting Program Director. And this is the kitchen. We have to help the chef as a galley duty. And every week we participate this type of galley duty in kitchen for making food, uh, cleaning the utensils, arranging the food, serving the foods. This is the inside our cabin. We have to set up a small laboratory for our work. This is the corridor. This on the two side of the corridor there are the rooms. This is the entertainment rooms. This is the gym and the communication. We got a just satellite phone for communication, and only 6 minutes per month we have a time quota. So the 6 minutes, you can imagine there is no internet, there is no WhatsApp, no other means of communication, only this satellite phone through which we can call for 6 minutes in a month with our family members and official phones. So this is the first time we reached Crown Bay. There we had some work with the Belgian research station, and there we are very fortunate to meet Alan Hubert. Alan Hubert is a famous polar scientist. He was the leader of Belgian research station. Alan Hubert is one of the few who could travel the South Pole and North Pole expedition on sledge. It's a great challenge for a scientist to reach both the poles taking a sledge. And Hubert spent a day with us. They have some scientific equipment in our ship. So Belgian government requested Indian government to take this equipment for the Belgian research station. And spending a day there, we started our journey towards our station Bharti. On the way, we met several types of icebergs. They're getting bigger. Iceberg with sea ice. There are crevasses. There are blue glittering light coming out from the icebergs. And here is a small time-lapse journey starting from Atlantic to Southern Ocean. So with this journey, we reached Letterman Hill area where our research station is situated. To reach the research station, we require helicopters, and we are having 2 helicopters in our ship. So you can see this is the heli hangar where 2 helicopters are there. So with this small helicopter, we will fly to research station Bharti. So I'm sharing the journey with you, how it was. We fly over the frozen Quilty Bay. there are lots of water bodies inside the islands. You can see the lakes around our station. This is Bharti, our second research base at Antarctica. And this is the front view. And behind our station, this is a beautiful Quilty Bay. This is inside the station. This is the main lounge. These are the food served there. There are very good quality of foods. These are the cabins where we stay. The station is very neat and clean, like almost 5-star hotel. This is the corridors. These are the bathroom and sauna. It's very important that we have to take bath in twice a week, and to get ourselves acclimatized with all the environment, we have to take some steam sauna. In very cold condition, our sweat gland usually didn't function properly. To activate this, we have to go for this sauna in steam about 80 °C every week. There are galley duty to clean the station, because after snowfall, there are lots of snow on the roof of the station, so we have to clean our own. Then it is time to go away from Bharti. We will start our journey towards Maitri. So it was the station landmark where the distance from Bharti to different places of India and other places of the world is being plaque erected by the expedition members only. Then this is a flag off ceremony. We started our journey towards Maitri. During our journey, we encountered the night. So the evening started. Before that, the entire time period was day. As we know that there is 6-month day, 6-month night in polar region, but because we are not in exactly pole, so the duration of light and duration of dark is very interesting. So in the February 14th, we start dating evening, and this is the movement of the sun. Usually sun never set down. It moves like this in the horizon, and again it rises in the sky. After that, this is a pack ice. This is a different type of pancake ice. You can see this is a very unique type of ice we encountered while we are moving from Bharti to Maitri. These are the pancake, close-up view of the pancake ice. These are some landscape, beautiful landscape around. Daily the light and shadow play over the white ice. The color scattering, you can see the beautiful light scattering out from the ice. Some landscape, and we reached our destination at India Bay. In India Bay, in this region, our first research station, Dakshin Gangotri, was there. From this point, our research station, Maitri, was 120 kilometers. By helicopter, we reached there. This is our station. It's a very old station, 30 years old station. There are lots of area. I must say this is the lounge and corridor of inside of Maitri. This is the lounge and dining. This is the western lounge of Maitri station. There's a very good library. There is a very interesting post office is there. Now it is not very much functioning, but previously it was a functional post office. These are the summer continent where we have to stay there. The summer members have to spend their time in these continents. These are the summer huts. Inside there are 4 beds and some working place. This is a famous lake, Priyadarshini. It's entirely frozen. We are walking there. You can see how the frozen ice of Priyadarshini lake are trapped, and below there are still water there. The outside temperature was almost 15 degree to minus 20 degree. There are blizzards. During blizzard, the temperature goes down. This is the wind chill factor. When there is wind, the temperature goes down. If there are minus 15-degree temperature of the year, if there is a wind of 50 knots, then the temperature will feel like minus 44 degrees. For that, we have to prepare ourselves with to combat with these blizzards. It's a very harsh condition to cope up with this blizzard, and we have to wear different type of clothing. Like this is full clothing. This is a 3-layer clothing. We have to wear it to combat this harsh environment. We should have gloves. We should have proper shoes. Now I will come to the scientific operations which is going on Antarctica. So there are 3 major spheres. One is the logistic, next is the research base, and third is the scientific components. So logistic component comprises of ship, the vehicles, helicopters and snowmobile vehicles. The research base, basically we are having 2 bases at Maitri and Bharti, and the third was the ship-based research activities. And the science activities include the astronomy, astrophysics, meteorology, earth science and cryospheric science, environmental science, biology, medicinal science, engineering and communication science. So in this field, lots of scientists are working in these 2 stations as well as in the ship. Now, the ship-based research activity are restricted to pollution monitoring and climate change related activities. I will come to the latter. And the other means of transport rather than the ship, these are the ALCI Illusion flight which operates from South Africa. This is a unique flight which can land in the ice, particularly this is the region is known as Novo Lazareska Air Base. These are the small feeder flights which connect between station inside Antarctic mainland. These 2 helicopters, this is the Kemov, the larger one, and this is the smaller one, which we usually take for field work. And this is the aerial view of our 2 stations. This is the aerial view of 2 stations along with the satellite research base. These 3 domes are the satellite receiving stations. This is a very unique system for Indian satellites. This facility is run by ISRO. This is the aerial view of Maitri. This is Lake Priyadarshini. This is the water channel. The water resource of the station is taken from this pumping station, and there are the other. This is the workshop region. This is the summer hut. These are the research laboratories. So this is the aerial view, and here is also a satellite communication dome. These are the power generator rooms. There are 12 power generator rooms around the stations. So this is in a nutshell the aerial view of the research base. The research vehicles used for the expedition. This is the piston bully or the snow tractor. This is telehandler. This is used for taking heavy loads. These are the light snow scooters. The Arctic truck, this is a unique one which can move in rock as well as in the ice. These are some research activities. This one is pollution monitoring, particularly the plastic monitoring program, which initiated from the voyage starting from 40-degree latitude to Southern Ocean and around the Antarctic region. We conducted this survey. We reported plastic fragments in many places. There are climate change studies to monitor how ocean temperature, ocean salinity, etc., changing due to climate using this type of torpedo sensors. There are laboratories, very well-equipped laboratories in Antarctica. These laboratories, basically, I'll show you the laboratories inside Bharti and Maitri. These are the Bharti-based laboratories. They are very well set up inside the station. You can see from this lots of biological facilities, microbiological facilities, incubators, laminar air flows, different type of microscopes, autoclaves, spectrophotometers, water analyzers, and these facilities are at Maitri. This is the famous Tirumala laboratory. This is the Nanda Devi lab. This is the Comet. So these all are the heart system laboratories. Inside there are lots of facilities. Just I will show some of them. Like this one is the magnetometers of IIG, Indian Institute of Geomagnetism. They are monitoring how the magnetic south pole is moving. NPL is studying higher altitude atmospheric phenomena. There are other facilities like rock cutting facilities, ultracentrifuge facilities, molecule water facilities, and this is a very interesting phenomenon. There is a phenomenon called body charge development. So due to very dry and cold environment, static electricity developed in our body. For handling equipment, we have to wear this type of bands to neutralize our body. Until and unless we neutralize our body, if we touch a metal object or any human body, there is a electric shock. And this electric shock can damage mobile phone, laptop, hard disks, and other equipment. The scientists should be very careful to operate the equipments and without wearing this type of badge, if we work, there is a chances of getting lost of the instrument due to the short circuit. These are weather balloons. Weather balloons are used for monitoring ozone. Ozone depletion is a very important phenomenon in the Antarctic region. So in every 15 days, IMD deploys this weather balloon to monitor the ozone depletion there. So these are the ozone monitoring instruments. This is a facility where our brain function is being analyzed. He's Dr. Azizuddin Khan from IIT Mumbai. He's studying in how our brain function in stress environment. So it was a unique type of study. These are the alternative energy harvesting system. This is the wind energy harvesting system. There are some solar energy harvesting system, but these are not sufficient for running the stations. We require fuel-based generators for running the systems. This is how scientific operations is going on using helicopters. The cargo is shifting from ship to the stations. These are the frozen lake. There are lots of studies associated with these lakes. We are taking samples using Niskin sampler from the helicopters because it was not approachable to collect sample from the center of the lake. It was not possible because it was the periphery was frozen. But from the periphery, we have to take the sediment cores, which is very important for climate-related studies. The glacier mass balance study, due to climate change, the glaciers are melting. The radiation are coming out. This is the online monitoring of radon network, which is effectively studied in Maitri region. This is mobile atmospheric radar facility for studying the upper atmosphere. There is very good seismological study units set up by National Geophysical Research Institute to monitor the plate tectonics, because Antarctica is very important for its plate tectonics movements. They are having a coastal deformation study in Maitri, and how the climate change is affecting and the Antarctic circumpolar current is being affected due to this climate change. During our stay in 6th of February, we encountered the highest temperature in Antarctica. At the particular point in the research base Esperanza, that day temperature was 18.3 degrees, plus 18 point. It was the highest temperature recorded in Antarctica. In that day, I was in Bharti, and that we can remember that day we have encountered only plus 7 degrees centigrade there. We came out outside with normal clothes. That day I can remember. There are other facilities for monitoring climate change. There are facilities for satellite communications. These are the setup called corner reflector. This is how glaciers are melting, studied by GPR ground penetrating radars. This is a famous glacier in Antarctica, Dakshin Gangotri Glacier. GSI is studying this glacier for its mass balance and the melting statistics. This is ice core collecting from the glaciers. These ice cores are very good indicator for climate change studies. This is the glacier mass balance study. There are other research stations. This is the Russian research stations. They are doing wonderful works. We have collaboration with them. We usually visit the stations. We have introduction with the scientists. The Russian station, this is the Polar Research Station of China. They are having two good stations near to Indian station. These are the observatory, and I'll tell about it later also. This is the biological study based on the Antarctic food chain. There are lots of interesting animals which are not available in our tropical region. Starting from the planktons, krills, whales, seals, penguins, birds, lots more. So these are the algae, these are the greening of Antarctic ice due to climate change. These are the lake algae. These are the lichen, which is one of the dominating vegetation in Antarctica. These are the moss. There is no leafy vegetation. Mainly Antarctica is dominated by this algae, lichen and moss. Is an important tropic member, the Antarctic krill. Lots of animals are dependent upon these krills for their food, like whales, like seals, like different birds, penguins. Antarctic mainland having 4 types of birds. So very interesting. This is one, Wilson storm petrel. This picture is taken by WWI. WWI is doing a long-term monitoring on the wildlife of Antarctica. So this is storm petrel. This picture is also taken by WII members. This is snow petrel. This is polar skua. Polar skua is a very interesting bird because polar skua is the only predator in that region. They predate on the snow petrel and penguin chicks. So we are having a polar skua tagging program. You can see these tags, georeference tag is there, so we can monitor the movement of the birds with the help of these georeference tags. Penguins, the most important member of Antarctica, the flagship species. This 2 types of penguin are common there. This is the Adela penguin. You can see this is Pinner Island penguin rookery. There are almost 7,000 penguins are there. They are very friendly. They come near to you. They are very inquisitive about humans. You can see their movements. There's a small video about the movements of the Adela penguins. I'm running out of time, so I'm not showing the entire videos. So this is Adela penguin and this is emperor penguin. It's the most elegant species of Antarctica. Very close-up views of Antarctic emperor penguins. Just showing you they're very good swimmers, and you can see there is a small video on their swimming activities. These are seals. There are 3 types of seal. These are the crab-eating seals. These are the Weddell seal. These are the rarest Antarctic fur seal. Beside this, we encounter lots of whales there. You can see very close-up views of whales. And there are lots more. I'm not showing you all pictures. So you can swim along with our ships. It's a long journey. We encountered many types of whales, almost 6 types of whales during our journey. And the beautiful nights. So this is the full moon of Dol Purnima, Holi. The light reflecting on Priyadarshini Lake. The lake appears like molten silver. It's a beautiful night. And when there is no moon, you can see billions of stars. It is unbelievable. There are so many stars in the sky. The night was literally beautiful. And I must remember the words written by Tagore. I'm reading it in Bengali. বিপুলয় পৃথিবীর কতটুকু জানি, দক্ষিণ মেরুর ঊর্ধ্বে যে অজ্ঞাত তারা, মহাজনশূন্যতায় রাত্রি তার করিতেছে সারা। সে আমার অর্ধরাত্রি অনিমেষ চোখে অনিদ্রা করেছে স্পর্শ অপূর্ব আলোকে। জন্মদিনে কাব্যগ্রন্থে লেখা রবীন্দ্রনাথের এই দক্ষিণ মেরু তারা সম্পর্কে আমি অভিভূত হয়ে যাই যে কিভাবে লেখেন, how it is possible to write so beautiful. And you can see the Milky Way galaxy with the shooting star, and shooting star is a very important aspect for the scientific communities. They are having March meteorite reported in 1984 in Antarctic region. There is a Antarctic meteorite location mapping. It's a very flagship program, and obviously the most beautiful phenomenon of Antarctica, the southern light, aurora australis. Just I'm showing you some glimpses of aurora. This is aurora above our research laboratories of Tirumala and Annapurna. This is aurora above our research station Maitreyi. And there is a small video of the aurora. This is known as the dancing aurora. You can see how it moves. And finally, it's the time to coming back, and how our journey was through the icebergs. So this is a fly through the icebergs. It's a beautiful experience. Thanks to our pilot, Captain Julius, who was very experienced, and they took us in between the icebergs, and it was a memorable flight for us. But our return was not very smooth. While returning back, we have encountered a severe storm surge, and it was a very, very tough situation. You can see from this imagery, there are almost 5 cyclones in between South Africa and Antarctica, and we have to change our course. The cyclone surged our ship towards south, and literally when we are exposed in the storm, I was remembering a very famous poem by Coleridge, The Rime of Ancient Mariner. Many of you are aware about this famous poem, and in that lines we can remember how the storm blast came and that chased us to south along with lots of waves, lots of ice. And he wrote in his poem that ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. No shapes of man or beast we can, the ice was all between. There's no human, no signature of life, all ice everywhere. And the line was very, very excited when we saw this type of icebergs. Coleridge wrote, "An ice must high came floating by, as green as emerald." সত্যি the word as green as emerald, আমরা বাংলা করলে বলি যে পান্নার মতো সবুজ, সত্যি পান্নার মতো লাগতো যখন এই আইসবার্গ গুলো আমাদের দিকে ভেসে আসতো। তো এই coming out from this situation, the situation ended with the appearance of this beautiful albatross, which was written in Coleridge. At length it crossed an albatross. Through the fog it came, as it had been a Christian soul. We hailed it in God's name. And the albatross took the ship towards tropical region. It was a good symbol. The story is a very long story. I'm not going to the rhyme of the ancient mariner, but this albatross took us to the coast of South Africa, and we was entered into the different world, because we came to know about COVID, we came to know about lockdown when we reached there. So like Coleridge sailor, after getting rid of the Coleridgean, we entered into a different world. Now this is Cape Town port. We entered there, and there was entirely lockdown situation, and we arrested there for 47 days. Thereafter we chance to came back to India. That's a different story. To conclude, this is the expedition route. We have traveled almost 19,000 kilometers, and during our return time, we have to travel more than 1,200 kilometers due to the storm surge. You can see this is the return route. It was far more due to the bad weather, due to the cyclone. And the take-home message for the students: there is a very good scope of research career in polar science. Those who are interested, they can think about, because during our time we are not aware about these activities. So I'm encouraging the young researchers to think about take a challenging career in polar science. There are lots of topics to work. There is climate change, ecosystem response, cryosphere, atmosphere, geosphere, interdisciplinary work in humanities. In social science, there are lots of work to be done in Antarctica. So you can plan. And I'll finish with a word. And I was amazed that when I came to know about this line yesterday, when I was just searching for it, the word uttered by our late President Sri Pranab Mukherjee in 2007 in a meeting of Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting, ATCM, 30th ATCM, he concluded that, let me conclude by stating that India remains committed to scientific research and technical cooperation in the polar regions. Antarctica being common heritage of mankind and the foremost symbol of peaceful years and cooperation, needs to be protected for prosperity. Yes, I pay my homage to our late President Pranab Mukherjee with this word. It's beautifully concluding remarks of ATCM in 2007. And that's all. I'm thanking you. I'm acknowledging my country, particularly Ministry of Arts Science and my institution, University of Calcutta, for giving me the opportunity to participate in the expedition. And I'm thankful to my research team. Without their cooperation, it was not possible to have this challenge. And finally, to New Alipur College Authority for giving me the opportunity to share my experience. And this is my email address. I'll welcome feedback from the participants, how you like it, and if somebody is interested to know about any information, they can write to me. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for your extremely enlightening speech. We will take all your questions at the end of second session. You told us very beautifully and elaborately how you have survived in that harsh environment, and you have shown us some of the biological diversity of that unique environment. Thank you so much, sir. Now I will request our departmental coordinator to introduce our second keynote speaker. Over to you, Ishita.
Thank you, Tanushree. Now, moving to the next part of this webinar. In our next session, we are honored to have our keynote speaker, Dr. Elisabetta Marino, with us. Ma'am, we heartily welcome you from the City of Joy, Kolkata. Dr. Marino is Associate Professor of English Literature at the University of Rome, Tor Vergata. She has published extensively on travel literature, on the English Romantic writers, on Italian American literature, Asian American, and Asian British literature. She has been teaching both English and American literature for over 20 years. Today, she will be speaking on romantic literature and environment. Ma'am, we are eagerly waiting to hear from you. Hence, requesting Dr. Elisabetta Marino to begin her address. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Good evening, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. And first of all, I would like to thank Dept Sarandji for inviting me. He's a good friend and a wonderful scholar. And then I would also like to thank Professor Chowdhury for the very interesting talk on his experience in Antarctica. And also I will thank him for introducing romanticism through Coleridge. So I will skip that part of my talk because you have already focused on him. Now, well before the rise of eco-critical studies, literature has always been interlaced with science, with the observation of nature, and the long 19th century is a very good instance of that. What I'm going to do now is to give you an overview of the relationship between nature and literature in writers both from England and from the United States. And therefore, we will not be traveling to Antarctica, but we will be crossing the ocean because we will start off in the UK and then we will be moving to the US because I will focus on the American Romanticism, which is called Transcendentalism, as all of you know. Now, the first writer I would like to focus my attention on is Robert Burns, who is normally not studied, for example, in Italy in our curricula. Robert Burns is associated with pre-Romanticism, and somehow he is a forerunner because he used Scottish dialect for poetry, thus anticipating the revolution brought about by Wordsworth and Coleridge in terms of poetical language. Robert Burns is one of the first who focused tremendously and in very, very precise details on the relationship, on the strong bond between man and nature. A strong bond that we should ponder upon nowadays in this moment of crisis. And I will expound on that later on when I will be talking about Mary Shelley. Robert Burns wrote a very beautiful poem entitled To a Mouse, which is something that in those days was considered absolutely impoetical. How can we dedicate a poem to a mouse? And actually in this poem he realized the correspondence between the life of one of the smallest creatures on the planet, a mouse, one of the most insignificant, we could even say, and man's life. In the poem, a plow digs out the house of the mouse, the place where the mouse had nested, and therefore the house of the mouse is destroyed. The suffering of the mouse is equated to the suffering of man. When man lose for, I don't know, for an earthquake or for some natural disaster, when man loses his own dwelling. So he established for the first time in Romanticism this very, very strong relationship between the natural world and the human world, showing that there is no difference between what happens to what we consider normally the lower creatures and the man. Now, obviously, Wordsworth and Coleridge deepened this concept, this idea of the strong relationship between man and nature. And this was also because they both wrote in a period in which the Industrial Revolution was changing, was altering the face of the world, the face of England. The countryside was disappearing. It was undergoing a massive transformation, not for the better, I should say, and therefore they considered the idea of going back to nature as vitalizing for man, as something that would regenerate humankind. Wordsworth especially employed Robert Hartley's view and his conception of nature to delve into poetry and to understand the resonance and the impact that nature would have on man. Wordsworth pondered on the fact that if you are surrounded by factories, by an unnatural environment, obviously the thoughts that you have are not positive, because our environment influences us, has a strong impact on our imagination. And therefore he fostered the idea of going back to nature. And he explored it in all his poems and in all his narratives. Now, normally we associate William Wordsworth and nature with poems such as Daffodils. But what I'm going to do now is to talk about another poem by Wordsworth, which is probably less known, but it is extremely interesting because it delves into the relationship between man and nature and how this relationship evolves with age. The poem I'm talking about is We Are Seven. Now, this poem actually stems from a real encounter between Wordsworth and a little girl in the countryside. And in this poem, Wordsworth explores the difference in reasoning, the difference in thinking between an adult and a child. The adult believes that there is, for example, a separation between the world of the living and the world of the dead, whereas a child doesn't perceive this gap, does not perceive this separation. And therefore, Wordsworth in this poem explores the clash between the adult way of thinking, which is linear, and the children's way of thinking, which is circular, and it goes with nature. I'm going to read some lines of the poem, which will be absolutely enlightening, because they will explain the difference in thinking between men and children. Now, the poet asks the child, sisters and brothers, little maid, how many may you be? How many? 7 in all, she said, and wondering looked at me. And where are they, I pray you tell? She answered, 7 are we, and 2 of us at Conley dwell, and 2 are gone to sea. 2 of us in the churchyard light, my sister and my brother, and in the churchyard cottage I dwell near them with my mother. And then the poet replies, how is it possible that you are 7 if 2 are dead? So you say that 2 at Conway dwell, and 2 are going to sea, yet you are 7, I pray you tell, sweet maid, how this may be. Then did the little maid reply, 7 boys and girls are we, 2 of us in the churchyard lie beneath the churchyard tree. So the insistence of the girl on the fact that being in the churchyard doesn't mean that they are gone forever, focuses the mind of the reader on the importance of nature. Because when they are buried under the trees, in a way they regenerate through nature, and therefore in the child's mind they are not gone, but they participate in the constant cycle of death and regeneration of nature. So this is really important. Whereas for us, when somebody is dead, there is a scissor. There is a scission between the living and the dead. For the children, it's not like that. Now, going towards Mary Shelley and what I was anticipating, the relationship between nature, man, and the pandemic state that we are all facing nowadays, I would like to share with you some thoughts on a very important novel that Mary Shelley wrote concerning the relationship between man and nature, and the exploitation of nature and its side effects. And this very important novel that is not very much studied, and it is overshadowed by the masterpiece by Mary Shelley, Frankenstein, that everybody knows, is entitled The Last Man, and it was published in 1826. The Last Man is something that I strongly advise you to teach your students, because your students might find it extremely interesting and they might relate to it nowadays. Because it is a story set in the future. It is actually set in 2073, so in the future even for us, and it explores the effects of a terrible pandemic on men. And this pandemic is strongly related to colonialism, to the exploitation not just of nature, but of one group of people on another. Actually, the pandemic stems from Istanbul, from Constantinople, which is the gate between East and West, and it spreads to the West, and even arrives to England, a place that was regarded as absolutely immune. And this resonates with what happened also in the past months. And strangely enough, this pandemic is regarded by Mary Shelley as a kind of reaction on the part of nature against those who tried to exploit it thoroughly. I will read just a small sentence from the text, which is absolutely enlightening. Nature, our mother and our friend, has turned on us a brow of menace. She showed us plainly that though she permitted us to assign her laws and subdue her apparent powers, yet if she put forth but a finger, we must quake. So in this novel, mankind is actually decimated. People die one after the other, but nature thrives. Nature actually takes back the role, the leading role that she was stripped of. And while the factories have to close because there is nobody there to work, and I mean, there's no point in having factory working when people are dying, nature thrives. Animals take back their spaces, and the trees bloom, and the flowers bloom, and this, in a way, is considered by Mary Shelley as a warning sign. She is saying to the readers, look, this is what is going to happen to you unless you change, you alter your relationship with nature. Nature is your mother and your friend. You cannot keep exploiting her, because otherwise a pandemic and your own death is what you will face. So this is a very important novel to read nowadays. And in actual fact, I read some passages of it with my students, and they really found the novel extremely thought-provoking and a source of important ideas, especially in the present crisis. Now, from the UK, I now would like to move to America and the relationship of American writers with nature. In a way, also because of the historical circumstances, and also because of, the closer contact with nature, this bond has always been present in literature, and it has exploded, and it has been considered as one of the most important issues, especially in the equivalent of the American Romanticism, that is transcendentalism. And by transcendentalism, I mean especially the moment in which Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Walt Whitman started to write. In actual fact, Emerson started off a quiet revolution by stating in one of his most important essays, entitled Nature, that there is no difference between man, God, and nature, because they all participate in the same substance. So if you want to love God, and if you want to express your worship towards God, you can just as well worship nature, because God is in every living creature, including animals, including all the creatures, including all the plants, including every blade of grass. God is everywhere. So nature has to be worshipped and respected. And this is very important, because he wrote this in a moment when America was on the verge of a similar industrial revolution that we had already in Britain. And therefore it was also a warning signal to the people. Just don't forget that nature is your ally. You cannot exploit nature, because nature otherwise will be your enemy. So by infusing God in nature, Emerson re-established a strong bond, a strong relationship between man and nature. This was further expanded by Henry David Thoreau. And some of you, I'm having a look at the chat, some of you mentioned actually Walden or Life in the Woods, which is exactly the text that I want to talk about. But first of all, Emerson and Thoreau, who were very close to one another and wrote together on the Dial, which was the journal, the newspaper of the Transcendentalist, especially Thoreau, delved into the contact with nature in another work, less known work that he wrote before Walden or Life in the Woods. And this novel is entitled A Week on the Concord and Merrimack Rivers, in which he explored and he recorded everything that he saw while he was on a canoe with his brother, and he was contemplating nature, and he was contemplating the birds, the fish, and everything that was surrounding him. I am going to mention this novel also because this is one of the most important texts in which the oral traditions of the Native Americans was recorded. So we owe to Henry David Thoreau the fact that we know so much about the oral tradition of the Native Americans. He actually inserted in his text the transcript of many stories that were connected with the natural world, viewed in a mystic, magical way by the natives. So in a way, this ethnographic novel is important, not just as an American work, but as a Native American work, because he recorded what previously it had never been recorded. So it is very important, and always in connection with nature. In Walden or Life in the Woods, he also chronicled his experiment, his very important experiment that he carried out on the Walden Pond. Actually, Henry David Thoreau decided to show humankind that we can live perfectly happy and healthy without the need of any commodity, any goods, any superficial item. We can live in contact with nature. And he carried out his experiment for 2 years. He grew his own vegetables, he exchanged his beans for rice with the Native Americans, he lived on his own, he built his own hut, and he decided to divorce, in a way, the civil world. And he actually translated this 2-year experience into a novel that has the time span of virtually 1 year. Less than 1 year, actually, because Walden or Life in the Woods begins symbolically on the 4th of July and it ends in spring. So there is some editing that he did to his experience. It was written by Henry David Thoreau. I will write it. Why the 4th of July? The 4th of July obviously is a very important date for any American because it coincides with the American independence from Britain. But he provocatively decided to start his experiment on the 4th of July because he wanted to declare his independence from the so-called civilized society. He wanted to show that you can be independent, that you don't need any goods, any commodity. And my students, for example, are really amazed and shocked when they read Walden or Life in the Woods because they realize that they depend on commodities. Their life doesn't follow the natural rhythm of life. Whereas what Thoreau wants to say to mankind is that we have to go back to a natural way of living. How many of us wake up naturally? Virtually none of us. We need our alarm clock and we need our coffee because otherwise we cannot function properly. But Thoreau, he wants to say that we don't need anything of this. We can follow the rhythm of nature, which is the rhythm of our body. And therefore, in the text, and I'm going to share some passages of it with you, he says that he wants to be a chanticleer because he wants to awaken humankind. He wants to show humankind that we do not need anything that is superficial, and we need to follow the natural cycle. We need to sleep when it is dark, we need to awaken when it is daylight, and just follow the rhythm of nature, just like the little girl in We Are Seven by Wordsworth. And in actual fact, Thoreau was heavily influenced, and also Emerson was heavily influenced by the Romantics, the English Romantics. They were both influenced by Wordsworth and Coleridge. And in actual fact, Thoreau highlights the fact that his text is an experiment, just the way for Wordsworth and Coleridge the lyrical ballads were an experiment in which they wanted to connect natural way of speaking to poetry. So once again, the connection with poetry, nature, and man is highlighted. Now, I'm going to read a passage from Walden or Life in the Woods, and I'm going to highlight some of the most important elements. The millions is talking about the fact that people are not rich. They believe they are awake, but they lead their life as if they were automatons. Their time is not their own time, but it's the time of work, the time of school, the time set by everything else but their own soul and nature. The millions are awake enough for physical labor, so our body is awake. Our conscience, our soul, our mind is not really awakened. But only 1 in a million is awake enough for effective intellectual exertion, and only 1 in 100 millions to a poetic or divine life. To be awake is to be alive. I have never yet met a man who was quite awake. And this idea of men that are far away from a natural way of living and therefore behave as if they were automatons will be recalled by William Carlos Williams in his very, very famous poem entitled Patterson. And Patterson is a place, but Patterson is also a waterfall. And therefore, again, the idea that in order to be awakened, in order to live your life fully, you need to go back to nature. And this is essential. I will quote another line, another passage from Walden. Men normally tend to postpone. in our life we tend to postpone, we tend to think that our life is never ending, that you can do it later, there will be a better time for doing things, but like in nature, like in the cycle of nature, every moment is precious, and every moment actually may be the last. But all these times and places and occasions are now and here. So every moment is precious. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. And therefore, living in harmony with nature means that every second is precious. Nature never wastes time. Every moment is precious for a plant, so every moment must be precious for a man. And I would like to end my talk so that we can have more time for questions, because I think the session will finish in 15-20 minutes or so. The last writer I would like to talk about is the writer that epitomizes what we have discussed so far. A writer who has been imbued very much with British Romanticism, but also with the works by Emerson and Henry David Thoreau. I'm talking about Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman actually believed he was the poet of America. And in a moment, a certain time of his life, he actually believed he was a world poet, because his lines could embody an all-encompassing idea of poetry. And his masterpiece that he worked on, and he worked and reworked on for all his life, that is Leaves of Grass, is actually the epitome of this concept. Leaves of Grass. Nature, and the fact that every leaf, every blade of grass is the same. Grass is the same in Italy, it is the same in India, it is the same in America, because men are all the same. They are equal. There is no difference. And therefore, in his poetry, in his idea of poetry, there is the idea of universal message. A universal idea of poetry, a universal contact with nature. And he believes that going back to nature is a way to recover also a deep contact, not just with oneself, but with all the other human beings. He talks about his own delicious burden, and the delicious burden is the fact that we have a responsibility for humankind. Men and women, for him, are his own delicious burden. Okay, and the poem I would like to end my talk with is actually probably the most important in this respect, and probably the poem that exemplifies better what he meant by American poetry. Song of the Open Road. The open road is not a road with asphalt. It is a country road, a road immersed in nature. And Whitman himself described himself, and he depicted himself as a peasant. If you are familiar with one of the most important images of Leaves of Grass, the image of himself that he inserted in the first publication of Leaves of Grass, he is actually dressed as if he was a peasant. He's not wearing a jacket. is wearing a hat, and he's got the posture of a normal person, because a poet is not a distant being. Like Wordsworth and Coleridge said, a poet is a man speaking to man. And this is exactly what also Whitman believed. A poet is a man speaking to man about experiences that we all have. And the open road that he talks about in his poem is the road of the never-ending possibilities that in our life we all have if we follow the path of nature, if we believe that we are in contact not just with other fellow human beings, but with everything that surrounds us, because we are all interconnected. Man, nature, other men, animals, we are all a huge extended family. And I'm going to read it. Afoot and light-hearted. The idea of being afoot is important. You don't need any car, you don't need anything. You need your feet. You need your body. Your body is important. And your body gives you roots and wings. It gives you everything. Afoot and light-hearted, I take to the open road. Healthy, free, the world before me, the long brown path before me, leading wherever I choose. So this idea of a brown path, of a natural path that you can go through, and it can lead you wherever you want to go. Henceforth, I ask not good fortune. I myself am good fortune. Henceforth, I whimper no more, postpone no more, need nothing. The idea that you don't need anything but nature, but your own body, but your own contact with what surrounds us. Done with indoor complaints, libraries, querulous criticism, strong and content, I travel the open road. The earth, that is sufficient. I do not want the constellations any nearer. I know where they are very well, and they are very well where they are. I know they suffice for those who belong to them. Still here, I carry my own delicious burden. This is the burden I was telling you about. I carry them, men and women. I carry them with me wherever I go. I swear it is impossible for me to get rid of them. I am filled with them, and I will feel them in return. So this idea of interconnectedness, this idea of being in harmony with nature, is what really makes our life complete and worthy of living. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your knowledge with us. You impressed us with wide scholarship. Thank you, ma'am, for giving your valuable time to us. You explained so well that nature includes all, whether it's literature or mankind. Thank you, Dr. Marino. We are surely enriched and inspired. Thank you so much. Now, moving to the question answer session, and that will be conducted by Tonushri.
Thank you, Ishita. I want to thank sir and madam. They basically amalgamated the science and literature or vice versa. So we can take only a few questions to the time shortage. The first question is for Dr. Punarbasu Choudhury. Bipin Bihari Goyal, he wants to see some more products of Antarctica. Sir.
Can you repeat the question?
Bipin Bihari Goyal, we want to see some more flora other than carbon algae from Antarctica.
Actually, where the Indian research station is there, in Bharati and Maitreyi, there is the limitation of flora. There is two vegetative representation. One is Antarctic hairgrass and Antarctic pearlwort. These two species are found in Antarctica as are plants. But both the plants are available in Antarctic Peninsula region, not where we have our stations. There only we are having this algae, moss, and lichen. So it is not possible to show the other two plants which are reported from Antarctic region as because we didn't encounter them during our expedition. We have some other pictures, but due to lack of time, it's not possible to show. There are lots of other species of lichen, lots of other species of mosses, and I have shown only representative of a few due to constraint of time. If he is interested, he can keep in contact with me. I will share his regarding the flora and if he has any other question. Next.
Okay, sir, thank you. Next question is from Dr. Elizabeth. Abhijit Saha asked, what was the goal of absolute this whole spectrum of impact? And do you think that knowledge will be lost with essential information from this age of capitalism?
I can't hear anything.
Yes, it is in the chat.
Tanushree, you are not audible to us. You are not audible.
Am I audible now, sir?
Little better.
Yes.
Yes, sorry for the interruption. Madam, Abhijit Shah asked, what was the role of absolute state within this whole spectrum of imbalance? And do you think that the knowledge did lose its essence before information from this age of capitalism?
Okay, it's in the chat box. Okay, knowledge. Do you think the knowledge did lose its essence before information from this age of capitalism? Okay, for sure. There is a strong connection between capitalism or industrialization and the loss of contact with nature. And therefore, poets and writers feel that they have a responsibility. They have this responsibility and this goal of leading man back to nature, but in a very harmonious relationship. Because this is exactly what Mary Shelley wrote in The Last Man. You may have two different approaches to nature. You can either approach nature to exploit it, and then nature will strike back because there will be pandemics and there will be what we are experiencing at the moment, which is strongly connected with pollution, with our exploitation of nature. Or we can establish a contact with nature, considering nature as if she was our mother. And this connects very well also the discourse to India, because in actual fact, Emerson, Thoreau, and even Whitman were very much influenced by Indian philosophy, by the idea of Brahmanatman, this idea of a universal soul that pervades everything. And therefore there is a harmony, there should be a harmony between man and nature, because we all participate in the same essence, in the same substance. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, you have a question. Obik asked, do you believe that presence of moss in that area is a sign of global warming? And you can say that plant succession is going on there in full swing? It is asked by Obik, sir.
Thank you for this question. First of all, the moss is natural vegetation there, and for when the ice melts, the lichen and moss emerge for the short period of time. So it's natural there. But in some places, this vegetation are increasing due to climate change. It has been reported. But for climate change, the major community is the algal community is growing on the ice, which is known as green ice formation. Green ice is the indicator of climate change. But the moss is natural, and moss is not very much associated with this climate change, and the succession is going on there, but due to lack of species, especially only two types of flowering plants are there, the Antarctic hairgrass and Antarctic pearlwort. So they are not common in all regions, only restricted to the Antarctic Peninsular region. So we can't conclude that this the succession is happening everywhere due to climate change. I think lots of studies required to conclude that the climate change is causing succession in all communities. The succession in the algal community is established, but lots of studies required to establish that the succession for the moss and succession for the lichen is going on. This year, SAC, Space Application Center, has a special drive on monitoring this moss and lichen community using satellite remote sensing. I think after that observation, we can have a conclusion regarding this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next and final question is for Dr. Elisabetta Marino. This question was asked by Ankita Shaha. What is the difference between romanticism and neo-romanticism? And to what extent both connect with back to the nature?
Okay. Now, romanticism and new romanticism, like Victorianism and new Victorianism. Okay, there is more awareness, I would say, by new romantics, new awareness of the problems that romantic writers of the 19th century were just beginning to experience. So, whereas at the beginning, in the 19th century, romantic writers were somehow foreseeing also the problems that we might have had we continued to exploit nature, neo-romantic writers have this certainty. There have been problems, there are problems connected with the exploitation of nature. And therefore this aspect is even more present and highlighted. So I think that the difference is a difference of awareness. In the previous generation, they were less aware. In the second generation, they're more aware of the problems, but also more aware of the solutions. So it's an all-encompassing awareness. I think that the impact, also the involvement of the readership is even more in the second generation. So the readers must be awakened even more. They must be involved even more. So I think this is the difference. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir, for answering all the queries. Now we have reached to the end of the webinar. The feedback form or link is provided in the chat box. Kindly fill up and submit to get the e-certificate. We will send you the e-certificate within 10 days after the manual checkup. Thank you. Now Dr. Shumita Shor will conclude the vote of thanks. Over to you, Shumita Di.
Thank you, Tanushree. It's my privilege to have been asked to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion. On behalf of the Department of Environmental Studies, New Alipur College, I would express my sincere gratitude to our respected Principal Sir, Dr. Joydeep Sharangi, respected Vice Principal Sir, Professor Divesh Pera, Coordinator of Internal Quality Assurance Cell, Dr. Shamabrata Das, for their encouragement and guidance. Our heartfelt gratitude and thanks go to our two distinguished speakers, Dr.